5 scores! Rick Vaughn.
We've decided to get ourselves back in the game again with our podcast.
Rick Vaughn, Gary Madden.
Probably the craziest story that you're ever going to hear about hockey.
We're going to be coming back to you on a regular basis.
You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 109 of the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs Fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vive. Squid, we start another year, and happy to be here, it looks like, because we're still here.
Yeah, I'm going down to Cincinnati to see my son because he didn't make it home for Christmas. So we're going to go down there tomorrow and come back on Sunday.
Fantastic.
So
we're getting things rock and rolling here.
Yeah.
Well, getting right to it, our guest today was chosen 108th overall by the New Jersey Devils in the 1986 draft. Enjoyed close to a 10-year pro career. Dabble in politics, which we'll get into. Plays charity games with you, I believe, at different times. Working for NHL causes, which is always a great thing. Troy Crowder. First off, Troy, thanks for joining us today. And how you keeping?
Oh, I'm doing good. Pleasure to be here. Thanks very much.
So how are you staying busy these days? You talked off air saying you've got lots on the go, so maybe fill us in on some of the things you're doing.
Yeah, no, I've got a piece of property that I've owned for 30 years that used to be a resort, so it's a never-ending make-work project that keeps me fairly busy. I'm doing a few charity games right now. I've been working on some skate projects that I've patented years ago and then developed some new stuff. So doing a lot of trial and error things with that. And just, trying to stay busy, looking to do a little bit of a tour with some other alumni guys, some enforcers, and a little bit of a mental health awareness tour and try to get that organized. But, that may be this spring or next fall. We'll see how things play out.
Well, is that maybe a little bit about this? That's funny you mention that because Red Kelly's son, I met in Lake Placid, and he is involved in skates he said that every pair of skates somebody puts on when you buy them in the store, they don't fit you properly. Yeah. Because it's been his goal, and I haven't talked to him for a couple of years, but he is going to eventually design a skate. He helps custom design skates for not only NHL players at times, but for kids playing, because he said it's so critical in today's game that the skates don't fit properly, and they should. Yeah.
No, it's I've said this for 20 years because I've been doing it for about 25 years that you can have a Ferrari engine, but if you got Volkswagen suspension, you're not going to turn the corner very well.
Well, that is a very good point.
Yeah.
I can't argue with that.
No, and then there's so many factors involved with the proper amount of ankle bend, to get that proper flexion that's, not just ideal in general, but to your body type. Bow-legged guys don't need as much bend as a knock-kneed guy, and there's all kinds of factors in the width and the length and where your center of balance is versus where the blade's located. And I mean, I could go on forever and ever and ever, but I patented an adjustable blade holder where you can change where the blade is located on your skate so that you can find your balance point. And I patented an eyelet extension that allows you to put your eyelets farther forward to your desired bending point. And I've got about 3 other things that I've been working on, but I haven't patented them because the patent process isn't very good unless you got a lot of money to fight the big boys.
Well, that's really interesting. You said, well, it's so funny. Well, my little funny story here, sidetrack. When I bought skates about 4 or 5 years ago, I had to buy a pair and break down. I go into the store, and I always wore tacks. And that shows you how old I am. So I'm buying these Bowers, and I'm looking at them, and the cost went anywhere from $200 to $1,000. So I look at this one pair, and I'm looking at their $250, and the next ones are $450. And I go, all right, buddy, I'm not very smart. Tell me, what's the difference in these two? I can't see it, like between this and this for $200. And he said, well, that's last year's model. Yeah. This is this year's model. And you see the eyelet at the top on the inside of your boot? Yeah. Well, you notice that one's tapered a little lower, and that's better for your edges. I mean, whoa. Like, take a look at this body and this face. Like this body. You think edges matter at the 60-year-old playing hockey? He goes, take the cheap ones.
Yeah.
So,
I
I
think it is
tell people,
important.
it doesn't matter if you're a kid or you're an old guy. The easier it is to skate, the easier it is to skate. So
That's
if
a very
someone
good
can do
point.
something to make it easier for you to skate, then the less work you got to do, the longer you can keep playing hockey.
that's a good point.
Yeah,
That's
I
a
think
good
I
point.
saw
Squid,
that islet one you were talking about. You had that with you one time.
Yeah, I had, remember Aaron Ekblad was playing junior. That's he was my first project that I kind of went thinking that might launch things. But yeah, so he was in junior, had World Junior Camp, and I skated so much of the World Junior Camp and getting ready for it that he had lace bite so bad that he couldn't even put his boot on. And so I had moved to Barrie. I don't know how long I'd been there for, if that was my second year, I think maybe in Barrie. Anyways, he had heard through the grapevine I was doing this eyelet thing that helped with lace bite and allowed you to bend and stuff. So he called me, and I ended up meeting him down at the rink at morning skate. And he just finished, the team had just finished, but he was just getting his ankle iced. And so I said, well, this is the deal. This is the thing I got right here. He goes, well, can you put them on my skates? I'm like, yeah, it takes 5 minutes. So I went in, grabbed the trainer's screwdriver, put them on, and he goes, I'm going to try them right now. I'm like, sure, go ahead. And he skated around, and he just started smiling from ear to ear. He goes, I went from like not knowing when I'm going to play hockey again to like, I'm going to skate tonight. And so he wore them that year. He must have broke 35 pair of them because he cranks his skates so tight. But I had to keep developing better plastics and just kept fitting him. But he went from a top 5 ranked kid to number 1 overall. Next year he wore them. He was rookie of the year. About halfway through the following season, I tried to negotiate to kind of get him on board with his agent, and I was getting the runaround because Bauer didn't want to do this and didn't want this and whatever. And so anyways, I just stopped supplying it, kind of thing. It was getting frustrating. And anyways, so ended up breaking his leg a little while after that. He didn't have the eyelet extension. He's locked in his boot and couldn't turn properly. And so, yeah, so it's, I've fit quite a few guys. So yeah, eventually, well, you see even the companies right now, like I went and looked at skates this year, and, you know, Bauer's got individual eyelets now. They've got the eyelets all used to go back to your ankle, and now they all go straight up and down, and some of them go farther away, creating a bigger opening. And so after 20 years, they're all starting to finally realize how important this is. And, but there's still so many more things that should be done in a pair of skates. Like that's just one of 5 things that should be adjustable or customizable to a person.
well, it's so funny listening to guys talk. In our day, it was a rocker skate on the blade.
Yeah.
Now guys are talking about the indentation, the hollow point in the blade, and about how deep it is or how far it's cut.
Yeah.
And when you hear, and even you hear guys at our age talking about, the guy the other day is complaining, God damn, I told that guy the other day I wanted a 0.6 whatever hollow, and he didn't write it down. And I was looking at the guy saying, how can you remember that? And he did it wrong, and I'm on my skates. I don't like him. So even us guys are complaining still too about it. So it is obviously a factor.
It makes a factor even in the hollow, because you just think of how thin a blade is. Now, if you cut that thing really deep and shallow, like a 1/2 inch hollow, they call them, is this what used to be the standard.
Yeah.
My 240 pounds is digging in the ice. So if you cut it at 3/4 of an inch hollow, or 5/8, or even an inch hollow, which is a much flatter bottom, I don't dig in the ice as much.
Yeah.
So it makes my glide a lot easier. So if you're a heavier guy, you want less of a hollow, so you have more glide, easier to be, staying above the ice, and you're not digging in all the time.
Good. Squid, any thoughts on that?
I think mine are usually around 3/4 to 7/8.
Yeah, that's what I go on. Yeah, that's kind of the big man's cut, or a senior like Mike's talking about. If you're not worried about really cutting a sharp edge, you might as well be floating on top and gliding.
Hey boys, as long as I can stay on top of the ice, that's all I care about.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So, well, now the other thing I guess we should talk about is you guys have something else in common, not only playing the National Hockey League, but your boys both went to Miami, Ohio together, and I think they're back together now in Cincinnati.
Well, they never played at the same time at Miami of Ohio, but they did. They both are alumni. And my son's, this is his first year in the ECHL, and he's already pulling me. He's a bit of a suitcase his first year. So he went down to the Everglades, never even got there for more than a couple of days. They had 9D. They got guys sent to them, so they traded him. And he went to Kansas City. They had 9D. Got in maybe 5 or 6 games there, and realized the coach said, "Listen, we don't have room." So they sent him to Cincinnati, and fortunately, when he got there, there was a suspension and a bunch of guys injured, so he got to play. I think they had 5D the first game. He was pretty excited. So
Yeah,
they've
been going 5D for a few games now. And
yeah, I think 3 games he played with 5, 6D, and then he was all excited for their last game, but then the snowstorm hit and they never got to play. So they're back at it, I guess, on the 28th. So he's
going to be there,
the opportunity to play.
Hey, boys, maybe a father-son trip maybe coming up, or a father-father trip coming up.
Yeah.
I'm going down. My wife and I are going down Wednesday. We're going to go to Indy Friday and then watch the game Saturday, come back Sunday. So, So I'll get to meet your son.
Yeah, that's awesome. So give him a big hug for Christmas for me. I
will.
We didn't know what he was going to get for time off, but the 2 days in a snowstorm didn't do much.
No, Justin didn't make it home either, and a couple of guys got stranded. Polino was trying to get to Ellicottville, and he never made it. Oh boy, I'll tell you that it was a pretty crazy 2 days.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Now, Troy, you're born in Suburbs. We talked about out there, a breeding ground for hockey players. Talk about life growing up as a youngster.
Well, my dad played in the East Coast League, what's called the Eastern League back in the day, and he was a hard-nosed defenseman. And my brother was born in Nashville, and my dad was playing there. I was born in the summertime back in Sudbury, the year after, and then they played in Jacksonville for a while. And my dad was about 23, 24 or so, and Philadelphia had just come in the league, and they invited him to come to camp. They were looking for a tough-nosed defenseman kind of thing, and he used to fight Schultze and all those guys back in the day. And but when he came home that summer, my grandfather was a mine manager, and one of his big bosses kind of gave my dad the opportunity to work at a very nice job at Inco, the mining company, not being underground, being an HR guy, and lots of benefits. So, the kids are taken care of, and way more money than he was making. Probably would have been more money than he made in the NHL at that time, And so he opted that way out. But I guess genetically that love for hockey was put into me and my brother, and we lived literally like 400 yards from an outdoor rink. So that was our before school, after dinner, every day of the winter down there skating and playing and loving hockey. And so, yeah, my love for hockey, was what kept me going. And then by the time I got to junior, my role changed because of my size. I went from being the top player, captain on my midget team, to the enforcer for the Hamilton Steelhawks under Bill LaForge. So, but, understandably so, a tough role and everything else. I just didn't want to give up the game because I loved hockey so much. So, you're willing to sacrifice and do whatever you can to keep playing. And the one good thing I can say about Bill LaForge is that he said, if you're going to make it, this is how you're going to make it, So that was my route.
It's funny, Troy, we talk about that a lot with a lot of the guys we have on here. About how, you're growing up, you're playing Bantam, midget, you're the best player, get to junior, you're probably one of the better players. Then all of a sudden you got to change when you get to the next level, and you got to do something else. You got to stand out.
No, and I tell that to my kid, and Lou Lamoriello was really, really key in explaining this, not just as a fighter, but as a player. He says a hockey team is like an orchestra. And you got to realize that it takes a tuba player, and it takes a saxophone and a trombone and a violin and a harp. So you got to analyze, what's going on your team and where you're going to fit in and to play. And unfortunately, when you're drafted by a team, if you do want to make that particular team, and you're unlike today where your agents call and get you traded the next day, back in the day, you're with that team, so you better figure out what role you're going to do to be on that team.
Well, we know all about that, Squid. You went through that, right? And playing in the 80s and guys getting designated that way and no options whatsoever except to do what you're told or move on. No moving on.
It's funny because a guy like Greg Carrion, who was so talented, played in Brantford in OHL, and he was a great player. But when he went to LA, they put him in a defensive position as a third line checking centerman, and he could never get out of it. Even though I thought he was a much better player than anybody ever gave him credit. But, sometimes you got to find a niche where you're going to fit in and you're going to stay around for a while.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it.
Now, as Squid started touching on we asked guys about this, the crossover to all of a sudden change your role on the hockey team. Were you always big size, by the way, growing up? It sounds like you were obviously big, but was there a moment you just had to say, look, it's what I got to do? And did you then go out and start looking for it, or did they just come to you because you were big anyway?
Well, so I grew up with Craig Duncanson, who was a first-round draft pick to LA, and Darren Moxham, who was captain of Belleville Bulls and the Kitchener Rangers, and both very tough players. They played that way. One a year older and one 2 or 3 years older than me. And they both just said to me right off the bat, you're 6'5", Troy. They're going to want you to fight. So that was kind of like the get ready to fight speech I got from them. So they asked me if I'd ever been in a fight before. And I said, well, not really. So one of their buddies had got jumped a week or two before by a few other guys. And they knew they were all going to be at this dance at the Italian club or whatever, the Crusoe club. And so they said, well, they don't know who you are or your little baby face. So you're going to be the guy that sparks this for us. And we'll get in a good fight here. Right. So anyways, I end up ruffling some feathers and getting things going there. And we end up laying a beating on a few guys. And the boys like, well, you know how to fight. That's for sure. And so that was my first intro. And then we in turn then went to the boxing gym, and my dad would let me stay up as a kid to watch Hockey Night in Canada, or if there was a boxing match, especially because that was kind of in Muhammad Ali's prime at the time.
Yeah.
And so Muhammad Ali, I always thought as a kid was like the most coolest guy in the world, and the way he danced around and the way he hit the speed bag and just his things he would say. And, you win the fight before you even get in it because the way you trained and things like that. So I asked for a speed bag for my birthday when I was 12. So I put it up in the woodshed at the back of my parents' house. And I used to hit it quite often and loved the rhythm that it used to make, And so by the time I went into boxing at 16, well, I'd been hitting a speed bag for 4 years. So my hand-eye coordination was pretty good. So then I just had to learn the techniques of like twisting your foot and, using your hips and a few things. So it didn't take long before me, Craig, and Darren were beating the crap out of each other. And we decided that was enough sparring because we were all feeling like we were getting headaches or whatever, right? So we're like, okay, we're all good enough. We're ready for the season. And so that was kind of my warm up to it. And then I went into junior, and my coach at the time, Bill, just said, a couple, we hadn't even played an exhibition game, but we had like inter squad and whatever. And I didn't fight. I just didn't think, well, why would I fight one of my possible teammates kind of thing? It just didn't make sense to me. Yeah. So Bill said, do you want to be on this team? I'm like, yeah, I want to be on the team. He goes, okay, we're playing London tomorrow. So there's a guy named Greg Smythe. And they said, if you fight Greg Smythe tomorrow, he said, I'll sign you to a contract. I said, okay. So next game we played, and I fought Greg Smythe, and I beat him up, and went in the office the next morning, and coach said, great job, sign here, and boom, I was on the team. So I was like, okay, this is good, right? Next game we played against Windsor, and I went to hit a guy, and he cross-checked me in the face and split my face wide open. I was knocked out cold and trying to figure out what bench to go to or whatever, right? So I come back to I look down, I see my jersey's red, and I look over there and I see they got red jerseys. So then I realize, okay, that's the area I got to skate towards, and I get to the bench and the trainer just takes me off right away. And So I get stitched up and I'm out for the next whatever week of exhibition games, week and a half, 2 weeks, whatever it was. And I get back in time for the first game of the season, and we're playing the Marlies. They were in the OHL at the time, and Brian Tessier was the goalie, and he was my goalie back in midget. So I'm like, oh, wow, am I playing against the guy? So I'm all happy to play. I know a guy on the other team, whatever, right? And first period, puck comes, I'm in front of the net, just screening the goalie, And puck comes, I give a little tip, and boom, it goes in the net. So I scored my first goal. I'm like, yeah, too bad, Brian. I'm giving my buddy, a little bit of shit there. And, go on, second period, same thing. I'm in front of the net screening, but this time it just kind of hits me and goes in. I didn't have to touch the puck. So I got 2 goals now. And third period comes around, and I don't play a shift. And my parents, come down from Sudbury, and they're, Troy, after the game, like, what happened? You get hurt or something? You say something to coach? And I'm like, no, I'm not sure what happened. And my dad's like, well, you're now an adult because you're living away from home. And, even though I just turned 17, and he's like, you got to go in and you got to talk to your coach and ask him what went wrong and what you could do better to get more ice. And so I went in the next day and I said, coach, I said, I just wondering what I did wrong, why I didn't play in the third period. And Bill looked at me with this death stare and he said, you're not here to score goals. Remember that. And that was the end of my conversation. I just said, okay.
Now I know.
Bill. Thank you, coach. And walked out of the dressing room, and that was, and later on, he told me, he says, you can do pretty much anything you want as long as you drop the gloves when I tell you to drop the gloves. And that was kind of our understanding for the rest of my year there.
So Troy, did you ever have any problems adapting to a new way of playing, or from what you were used to?
It was stressful. I mean, like I said, I boxed my buddies a little in the summer, but that was my first ever fight on the ice was against the guy in the exhibition game, and my second was my second game of whatever the season. And so it was all very new to me, trying to learn where to grab and what to do. But I had, fairly long arms, and I could throw fast and hard, and I was accurate. So I had that as at least good starting point, but it didn't take me long to figure out how to maneuver guys and use their other arm to figure out when they're going to punch and throw them off balance. But you're still under stress, because you don't know what if the next guy's bigger and faster, or what if this or whatever. So it took me quite a while to probably into my pro days before I realized how to not really think about it. I just started going like, there's nothing I can do to change what's going to happen between now and the time I maybe get in a fight. So why am I wasting all this energy thinking about it? Just like Muhammad Ali said, if you've trained well enough, you've already won the fight, kind of thing. And so, I trained every summer, boxing and training, and I worked out lots and I hit the bag lots. And I learned the technique of how to use my body style to win fights. And so I kind of, after a while, didn't worry about it as much, but it took my couple of years of junior and my first year of pro to kind of get that under my belt to understand that,
Well, if it makes you feel any better, we've had every enforcer from Matthew Barnaby to George Larocque to Andre Waugh, you name, we've had so many guys on. And Chris Nyland, every guy said exactly what you said. And pretty much they would have anxious moments, and it took them a long time. It's not an easy job.
No, it's not an easy job. And you know what? It was a combination of Muhammad Ali. And then I was sent to this health farm down in Arizona called Canyon Ranch because I had a little bit of a dispute with my American League coach, and I didn't want to play for him and whatever else. And so I kind of parted ways with the team for a while. And then they sent me down there to get in shape. And at this place, they had every doctor, psychiatrist, psychologist, mental therapist, everything to stop smoking, lose weight, get healthier, whatever you wanted, right? And then she kind of helped explain too that, the concept of there's nothing that's going to change between now and then. And, and if you start feeling that way, focus on something that makes you feel strong and happy and whatever else, and just change your mindset. And so, a combination of just learning from other people, whether it was Muhammad Ali or the therapist or whatever, just practice over time. You kind of learn. It never fully goes away, but it's a lot easier to worry about it for a few minutes than for 5 days before you're going to play the Philadelphia Flyers or whoever, right? Or the Detroit Red Wings for your rematch or something,
Now, your draft year, when you got selected by New Jersey, talk about all that and how that all came down and who contacted you, and did they describe a role to you, or did you know what your role was going to be?
Well, basically, like I said, it all happened so fast. Imagine like my season ends in March playing A hockey in Walden, Ontario. It wasn't even AA or AAA, to being in the OHL, to, from the time I left Walden, a year and 2 months later, I'm drafted in the NHL. It was a pretty huge jump in my mind of like that it was even going to happen, or that it did happen, or whatever. But knowing that, I was probably the toughest guy in the OHL my very first year, and I was fighting all the time, that was probably going to be my role, kind of thing. It was never insinuated by Lou or by anybody, but as a presumption, I kind of figured that.
Yeah,
but
I'd be a pretty good one.
Yeah. And then, like I said, they drafted me that year. That year I was not even half, just part of the year I was in Belleville with Larry Maverty, which was a great experience on just the different ways the guys coaches. I went from, Bill LaForge, who was, we had the Valentine's Day massacre where he didn't want the puck to even hit the ice before the face-off. He wanted blood and death before we even got the game going, to, I got Larry Maverty, who's, I'm in there talking to him with Mush, Brian Marchman. That year I actually played forward, but the following year he put me on defense. But I'm in there with Mush trying to figure out what we're doing for a power play. And he looks at me and Mush, he goes, "You got more guys than they do. Score a goal." So pretty simplified coaching, and then, I went from there up to play for Bert Templeton, and Bert was a little more fanatical about a bit of a system and just hard work and getting back, so that it was easier on your D and your goalie. And, he was just more of a, I'm the boss, you work hard for me kind of guy, and that's where another guy that Rick and I play a lot of hockey with, Dave McElwain, and we had Nick Kiprios and Bill Holder and Darren Turcotte and Sean or Adam Burt. We had like 8 or 9 guys from that team that played like multiple years in the NHL from that one team. So that was a real neat experience to kind of have a winning team like that. And we ended up winning our division. We played Oshawa in a 7-game series to host the Memorial Cup, because back then they didn't award it. It was like you had to, the only award was the OHL got it that year. So whoever won the league got it. So we played them in a 7-game series and lost the 7th game by a goal. So they became the host team. And then we went back in the playoffs, won our division, they won their division. We played each other again to see who'd be the Ontario team. And the 6th game, I was skating with my head down and a guy hit me and I separated my shoulder. And so I didn't get to play the 7th game, and we lost the 7th game to host Memorial, or to be in the Memorial Cup as the Ontario team. And so that was a fun and exciting year, but frustrating too, just to get that close and never getting the taste of it,
I got a funny story about Bert.
Yeah.
When I was coaching in Mississauga, which was just a horrible year. I mean, we won 3 games all goddamn year.
Yeah.
But we're playing in Sudbury, and we're already down 6-0. And they get power plays, and Bert's putting out his number 1 line. And the guys just keep giving us penalties. And so finally I started throwing sticks on the ice. Just pissed off. I told my trainer, I said, "Take out your goddamn scissors and go up there and cut that wolf off, will you? The cable that it goes on." Because every time they score, that wolf would go across.
The wolf would howl and come across the ice there. Oh, yeah.
I told the trainer to go up and cut the wire, but he never did. But so I got kicked out of the game, and Bert just kept piling it up. I think we lost 10-1, I believe.
Oh, yeah. No mercy there.
No.
Now, Troy, talk about your first camp with New Jersey and how things went and some of the expectations you had going in.
Well, I had no idea, right? I mean, you go to junior camp, you got a week of basically a couple of days of skating, then your exhibition games, right?
Yeah.
Training camp was a whole new thing, and Lou was the GM at the time, and so he was all about anything new and cutting edge. It doesn't matter what it was, he wanted to be on top of things. So we were doing like max VO2 tests and running on treadmills and all kinds of things. And doing all these tests and stuff, and then we were having skate sessions, plus then we were having rookie games, and in our rookie games, like inter squad games, there were fights, and in the rookie games there was multiple fights. And I wasn't a very good skater, my arches roll in, so my IT bands, the sides of my legs were just so sore. I'd never been through so much running and skating in my entire life, And then I'd get back to the hotel, my hands would be all cut up and bruised from fighting, and my legs were sore, and all that was like U.S. Open tennis, and I grew to hate the U.S. Open tennis. It took me years to get over the fact that I hated tennis because of that training camp. Now I watch it, I love it, but it took me about 10 years after hockey was even retired that I even wanted to watch a tennis match, because all it associated was with these rookie camps that were just basically physical abuse to my body,
Well,
How are the players treating you?
The good old days where we went twice a day.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
2.5 hours each session. And, when you need those compression things they put on their legs now, and they fill up with air, and it takes the lactic acid out of your legs.
Yeah. And then, I went, through the progress of what a modern day camp is. Like I was in San Jose in 2001, right? You're only limited to this many hours on the ice, this many hours that you can even be around the team or coaches.
Yeah.
This many hours that have to be free time. Like it was literally, you got up in the morning and ate, and by the end of the day, you were exhausted. And the only time you ever left the arena was to go back to the hotel across the street to eat some food in between some other thing they were making you do. Yeah. So it was absolute just wear and tear. So. But yeah, I know the players, obviously guys are trying to make the team. So, there's a few guys I fought, in my own inter-squad games or whatever, but most guys knew my reputation. And so, and the veteran guys love me, couldn't wait for me to get on the team because, besides Kenny Danico, they didn't have a whole lot of like heavyweights. They had a couple guys that would fight once in a while, but they weren't really heavyweights. So the guys were, pretty excited to get me on board. So they would take me out once in a while, and I'd get to play, a veteran squad, inter squad game or something once in a while, because, they were trying to include me in a little bit of stuff. But yeah, they were really good. And then that, I did 2 years of that, 3 years of that, I should say, I guess. And then, or 2 years of that. And then my last year junior, after that, year we played North Bay, and I got traded back to Belleville, and that's when I started playing defense there. Had a fun year there, and I think I had 40 points as a defenseman, and played with Mush, me and he were D partners, and had a ton of fun. And I remember the end of the season, I'm going to go out and have some beers with Mush and whatever else, and we decided about 2-3 in the morning that we're going to get my billet's brother was a police officer, so we called him to give us a ride down to the rink so we could go have a couple beer with Mav, because we're now graduating from junior and allowed to drink kind of thing, and so we go down there, and Mav just starts cursing me out, "You stupid mother," going on about things, and I'm like, "What, Mav? We came down to see you." He goes, "You got to be in Utica tomorrow for a 12 o'clock game." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, you got called up to the American League." And I'm like, "Where's Utica?" And I had no idea where Utica was, right? He goes, "It's in New York. You got to drive there." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So my billet's brother drove me home. I think I napped for about 3 hours, got in my beat up old car, drove down there, got there. The boys were already out for warm up when I showed up. And Tommy Lee comes in. He goes, "Are you hungry, kid?" I said, "Yeah, I haven't eaten all day." "Okay." And he goes and grabs me a couple of hot dogs. I wolf them down before the game. I go out, have 2 fights, maybe even 3. I can't remember that game. And I don't know if we won or lost. I have no idea. It was all a blur to me at that point, you know. And you know, he just tapped me. Good job, kid. Good job, you know. And so I ended up playing 4 games for them in the I don't know if it was the playoffs. I think maybe it was the playoffs at the end of the season. I can't remember. It might have been playoffs. But yeah, so I played the last 4 games there. I got cross-checked, same thing. I think the 3rd or 4th game, right in the chin, split open again by a guy. And anyways, you know, season ends, and now we're sitting around again in the bar having a few beers, and you know, I'm like, oh my God, I can finally go home and relax and enjoy, you know, the summer now. And we're all sitting at a bar watching the New Jersey Devils play their last game of the season, and John McLean scores and they win, right? And everybody's jumping up and down, and it's just not registering for me. Like, I'm exhausted. I just played 4 games in 6 nights, had about 8 fights. Like, I just want to go home, you know? And everyone's like, whoa, they made the playoffs or whatever, right? And I'm like, whatever. Like, you know, it doesn't matter to me, you know? I wake up the next morning, phone rings. Troy, you got called up to, or it's Lou, you're coming up to New Jersey for the playoffs, right? And I'm like, what? So I load up my beat up old car, and I got like my mom's baby blue suitcase, you know, vinyl suitcase, and load her up with my clothes and drive up to New Jersey. And I get there and I pull in, and Lou's adamant about everybody being in a hotel for playoffs, right? So I'm getting there just as all the guys are checking in to the hotel for playoffs. He doesn't want them at home, no distractions or anything, right? And I come in with my bald tire Subaru, and I pull out my big, huge vinyl baby blue suitcase, and probably not wearing the best of clothes at the time. And Kirk Muller looks at me, he goes, oh my God, we got to take this kid shopping. So I check in, and I think it was probably the next day that Kirk took me out and got me some clothes and got me all hooked up or whatever, you know. And they're just, yeah, everybody was just super supportive, you know. And I didn't think I was going to play. I'm talking to Murray Brumwell, who had been called up as an extra D just in case someone got hurt, and there's a couple of the younger guys there, and so we're all assuming there's no chance in heck we're going to play, kind of thing. And we had Schoenfeld, Jim, as the coach at the time. And so Jim just said to us, I think the 2nd or 3rd day, basically, I don't think we even did anything the first few days. Probably 2nd or 3rd day, they arranged some ice for us. And he just said he'd throw a couple $100 on the boards. And he goes, okay, boys, 3-on-3 against each other, half ice for 45 minutes or whatever. Then do whatever you want to condition yourselves. You know, winner gets the money to take out for lunch. Loser pays the tab or the tip or something like that.
Yeah.
You know? And so basically I did that for like a month and a half, you know, just that was all I did, you know, just first round. I think it was maybe the Islanders we played. Then we played Washington, and, you know, 3rd round comes around, and they would take me on the road trips with them, but I wasn't playing or dressing for warm up or anything. But at least I got to go on the road and stuff. So that was fun. And so anyways, we're now playing against Boston back at home, 3rd game of the series, Stanley Cup semifinals. And, you know, I'm getting up, you know, barely awake, getting ready for my, you know, little shinny hockey game, and phone rings, and I answer the phone. It's Lou, and Lou's like, Troy, you're going to have warm up this morning. You're playing tonight. And I'm like, okay. And I was just like, I can't believe this is even happening, you know? And so I called my parents. I'm like, I think I'm going to play hockey tonight. So they called all my friends. And so it became a pretty big thing in my little town here. Everybody was there's only a couple of bars. There's one at the bowling alley and one down the road there. So everybody was either at the bowling alley or the other bar getting ready to watch me play, you know? So I went out and played, and had a couple scraps, you know, fought Jay Miller and Lyndon Byers, and you know, they played me forward, defense, penalty kill, power play, everything. I was just like, oh my God, like I must be a superstar. You know? Like, I can't believe this. And so anyways, my second fight was against Lyndon Byers near the end of the game, and there was only maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes left, so they kicked me out of the game. And I thought, well, I better stay here and high five the guys coming off the ice. You know, I got to be a team guy or whatever, right? So I'm standing there, and all of a sudden the players are coming off, and high five, and then the cameras are all bulging in, trying to get, you know, a view of things and whatever else. So I kind of backed up a bit, and the players had gone by, and Jim Schoenfeld was coming off the ice, and I hear him and the ref yelling at each other. Next thing you know, I see the little bump happen, right? And it was more of a bump, as in I think more Koharski was trying to get out of the way, and he stepped back and slid.
Was that have another donut night?
Yeah. And he slid on the cement because he was off the carpet, right? And he's like, "You pushed me," and he goes, "No, I didn't, you fat pig. Have another donut." And I was like, "Oh my God, I can't believe I just witnessed this," you know? And so anyways, I'm like, I got to get out of here. So I bolted down the hallway and got to the dressing room, and I'm telling that Shanahan sits beside me. So I'm telling him what happened. He goes, "No way." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm telling you, that just happened," you know? So anyways, they lost that game, lost the next game. And, you know, we were out 4 straight against Boston. And, you know, I was just like, well, what an experience, you know, just the fact, you know, I got to even play a game, and I was, you know, just in utter awe, right? And so I thought it was over. We're sitting around at the bar, and we're, you know, same thing now. I'm having a couple beer, and the season's over. And I think I'm going home finally, but at least now I got a real story to tell, you know? Yeah. And Kirk Muller comes up beside me, and he's like, "Great job, kid. You know, good. Yeah, it's great to have you. You know, you're going to be a part of this team, and, you know, I'm proud of you." And And the day he took me and Shanny out for dinner, and he got me a little clothes, I remember he drove me in this. He had this 300 ZX, whatever you want to call it, and it was maybe 2 or 3 years old, and had the digital dash and T-tops and everything. And I was just, you know, compared to my 15-year-old Subaru I was driving, I was pretty impressed, right? So anyways, he comes up to me, we're having some chats or whatever, and he said, "So what are you going to do with your bonus money?" So I don't even know what I got. It's not very much, I don't think. I only played the 1 game. And he says, "You going to buy a car?" I said, "I couldn't buy a car." He goes, "You want to buy my car?" And I said, "Well, I don't have enough money to buy your car." He goes, "How much is your bonus?" I said, "I think it's like $1,500 or something like that." He goes, "That'll do." And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "Listen, kid," he says, you're gonna be a big part of this team." And he says, "I got a pretty good bonus." He says, "You cash that $1,500 in, and you can take my car home. It's yours."
Wow.
So I was just like bewildered, right? Like, this is unbelievable that the captain is doing this. And so now that I play in the NHL, but I'm driving to my hometown, you know, with a white 300 ZX with the T-tops and everything, you know. And so it was a pretty neat first game experience for me. That was for sure.
Wow.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, so that's a pretty big story to up, but 1990, you stuck with the team for good.
Yeah.
I mean, how was that whole experience? Did you have a chance to take it all in, or was it just a blur going by?
It was a little bit of both. Like the first game, it was a blur because, you know, it was the first game of the season, and it's my first full year with the team, right? I'm going to start with the season and be there kind of thing. And so I was, you know, a little excited, a little nervous, a little whatever, but, you know, excited that it's, you know, I'm going to be in the NHL now. This is what's going to happen. And so I just remember sitting on the bench, and it wasn't very long into the game when Probert gave Claude Lemieux a good whack with a stick across the head, you know. And at that point, I really didn't know Claude very well. And, you know, he just came to the team and whatever else. And I just thought, oh, that's one of my teammates, right? So whoever skated by, I just yelled at them to get off the ice, and I jumped the bench and I went right after him. And so we ended up fighting, and I cut him that fight. And so he went off, and because of stitches and whatever else, he didn't come back and play. And so I played the rest of the game and didn't think much about it. And then after the game, everybody was just making such an ordeal. And I just never, it didn't register till kind of, it just kept growing and growing and growing, you know, the newspaper articles and the interviews. And then I was like, holy geez, like, you know, I've beaten up a lot of big guys before. I just never thought that it would become this big of an event, you know? And so that's kind of when a combination of the blur, and I was also aware of what was going on because it was such a big thing. Like everywhere I went, like I then became either the target of somebody wanting to take on the new heavyweight champ, you know, and get their name, or, you know, I was kind of expecting, you know, well, I'm the new guy, so I better be ready. And I also had a trainer at the time that I didn't figure this out till he told me after the season was over. But he was my trainer in the American Hockey League, and he loved fights, and he loved that I could beat up pretty much everybody. So he would actually instigate the fights. So he would, when the visiting team would come, or if we were the visiting team, the true trainers meet each other to coincide about, who the locker room boys are, who's doing laundry, where this is going and that's going. And he would in turn say to their trainer, Crowder's going after Cox tonight, or Crowder's coming after McSorley tonight, or whatever, right? And then their trainer would in turn go tell that guy that I'm coming after them. Meanwhile, he'd come up to me and say, hey, Troy, I was just talking to their trainer, and he told me Cox is coming after you tonight. And so he basically had brokered the fight before it even happened, And so a lot of what had happened in my fights, I thought guys were just coming at me for no apparent reason, but I'm pretty sure that my trainer had brokered probably 80 or 90% of them,
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
That's kind of that's like Jim Pizzatelli in Buffalo. He used to give out the tough guys. He used to give them robes to wear around the dressing room like they're boxers, right?
Oh, yeah,
and he loved the fights, and he used to chirp at guys on the ice and get guys into fights as well. And it was pretty crazy.
Oh, yeah, the trainers love that kind of stuff. I tell you, they do.
Yeah. Now Troy, so the Probert battle, it became famous, obviously. So now what happened? The legend of the Probert Crowder fights obviously continued on.
So basically we didn't play. That was like the first game of the year, and we didn't play again until January, like end of January, against each other, right? Because we were at different conferences and that. So anyhow, so between then and the first fight and their rematch fights, then it was like, I think I had 9 fights against the Philadelphia Flyers between, the first game of the season in January 1. And then we'd go on the road, and, I remember going into LA, and they had my height and weight and reach and everything in the boxing column because there was no big fights going on. So they talked about the possibility of me fighting McSorley or maybe somebody else with the team or whatever, right? And then, we're going into Edmonton, and there's, talks about me fighting there. And so then we go into Vancouver, and that's when the Cox fight happens, because my trainer's telling, their trainer, and Brian Burke has a funny story about it. I just saw Brian at the Hall of Fame inductions a little while ago, and he was telling Coxie, like, listen, this kid's knocking people out left, right, and center. Like, I got you here just in case something happens. Like, you don't have to fight him. And if you do fight him, don't be looking to exchange punches with this guy. Like, grab him good and whatever, And he goes, he didn't listen very well. So anyways, but I think Kruper, my trainer, probably provoked that one as well. So, I had knocked out a few guys, and I had won pretty much every fight from that point on. So by the time the rematch came, it was like big news. And I became friends with Ron McLean afterwards, and he was telling me that him and Don drove down from Toronto to Detroit just to watch the game. They weren't even broadcasting it. And they just sat in the stands. They got 2 tickets, and they went up in there and they watched it. And so anyways, first fight happens because I'm at the end of my shift. And again, another story comes out from this. Gerard Gallant did an interview with The Athletic about this. And he told Proby, he said, listen, I'm going to come off when Crowder, if we're on the same time, I'm going to come off at the end of my shift a little early, and you jump on for me and get him at the end of his shift or whatever, right? Yeah. So that's what happened. He came after me, and I just had a 1.5-minute shift, and I was pretty tired. So, but I wasn't going to say no in front of 18,000 people and look like a chicken or whatever, right? So anyways, he came after me and kind of got the jump on me or whatever, and we fought. And I'd say he maybe got a little bit the better of me, but I wasn't cut or hurt or anything. But after that fight, and after I got out of the penalty box, I had my coach was oh God, I can't even believe I'm not thinking of this right now. I'm having a mental block on this one. It'll come to me in a second. I loved him as a coach, and I can't believe I'm not remember his name right now.
Not Robbie Fitzgerald.
Anyways, so he says to me, screw that. He says, you are not getting another shift on the ice until I can get you on the end of one of his shifts. And so I basically sat there the whole game waiting for the opportunity. And finally he was stuck in a corner and one of our guys was close and he pulled whoever off the ice and I jumped on the ice and I went after him. And Proby's like, fuck you, I've been on forever. You know, I said, so was I last time. And I just started throwing them at him, right? And so anyways, we both got kicked out of the game. And Ron and Don, as soon as we both got kicked out, walked down from their seats and drove back to Toronto. They didn't even stay for the third period, you know? And so,
oh God, what's his name? The guy I just mentioned it. Robbie Fatork?
No, it was
not Jacques Lemaire.
No, it was John Cuniff. Sorry,
Cuniff.
John. I should remember your name.
Okay,
I love John Cuniff as a coach. He gave me all kinds of ice time and believed in me and just liked my character. And he was the guy that I scored 5 goals in the first 25 games as my coach. He was a great guy.
Now, speaking of Cherry and McLean, you had a very interesting introduction to Cherry the first time you met him, didn't you? Do you want to share that little story?
I think the first time I met him actually was at a softball event or something. I think is the first time I met him. I'm trying to think of where else I might have met Don.
But then you go up to him and say to him, I just want to let you know I'll be the new heavyweight champ of the NHL. You're speaking to him or something like that. And he went, okay, kid, you got a ways to go, but good luck.
No, I think that was. So that was after the first year. I think the playoffs maybe after my first year. I think maybe it was after my first year. And Kirk Muller was getting married in Kingston, and there was a charity. Molson's used to do all these charity softball games down in Niagara area. And so I was down there, and so there was Bobby Orr and Don and whoever and Kirk and all. We were all on the same team, and that's kind of Cherry had said something about the fights. I said, something about you better watch out for the big guy. I said, don't worry, I'll be the heavyweight of this league for a while or something like that to him. He goes, you got a ways to go, kid. Yeah. So Kirk Muller, again, another great Kirk Muller story. I always tell people what a phenomenal captain he was. So we're going into Detroit the night before, right? And Kirk says to me, what do you like to do, Troy? And at that time I'm single and I appreciate the female body. So I said, I wouldn't mind a strip bar or something like that. He said, so we had a team meeting and he said, listen, boys, you think we're going to let Troy sit in his hotel room all night and think about what he's going to do tomorrow? He says, we're all going out as a team. And then he asked me what I like to do. And I said, strip bar or whatever. So he said, you don't all have to stay very long. He says, but we're all going out as a team and we're going to support Troy and whatever, right? So Kirk told the coach, he said, listen, we're all going out tonight. We're not doing a morning skate. We don't want whatever. We'll show up, make the pregame meal anytime between 2 and 5 when our guys can show up whenever they feel like they want to eat. And we'll see you at the game kind of thing, right? And so we went out and we got pretty lambasted that night. And I remember the bar owner just kept giving me shooters, any free drink I wanted because he wanted Proby to kick my ass, And he just kept saying, like, oh yeah, because I can't wait for the fight tomorrow. But I tell you right now, you can drink for free all night because I want Proby to kick your ass or whatever like that. So we had an unbelievably fun night, and we'd lost, I think, previous road trip like 4 or 5 road games in a row. And so Kirk was like, we got to change it up anyways, right? So we decide no morning skate, he decides no morning skate. We're going to go out as a team. We're going to party. We're going to keep Troy preoccupied. And it worked. We went out, we beat them the next day. I fought twice. We won the game. And, that was, and then I think we won a whole bunch of road games after that. So it was a good thing on Kirk's behalf.
Hey, Squid, can you top that one as a captain?
No, I don't believe. Well, I shouldn't say I can't, but we had our fair share of going out and going to the strip joints and that sort of thing. And but they were
commonplace back then.
They were mandated team meetings.
Yeah. It was either that or you're going to some little dive restaurant in the afternoon for lunch, and lunch included a lot of beers. That was the fun of the 80s and 90s hockey, that's for sure.
Well, Troy, I think Squid's being modest because one of his stories was going into Philadelphia with the team, and all of a sudden the Philly flu overcame the team, and it was near the end of the season, and they had a few games left. Yeah. And it
was our last game of the season.
Yeah. But the team was going to reward the players with a couple extra days vacation or a party, and he flipped out. And he said, "What are you talking about? These guys all pulled the chute and act like a bunch of pussies. And now they're not playing. We're not. Why are we rewarding these guys?"
Oh yeah,
well, you were there.
The Philly flu was legitimate. It was as big as COVID back in the day.
Yeah,
it was. Ballard was taking us to what's the place in New Jersey where the casinos are?
Oh, Atlantic City.
Atlantic City. After the game in Philly.
Yeah.
Well, a week leading up to that, about 8 guys went down with sore groins, sore backs. It's like what the fuck? Anyway, so we literally have 8 or 9 guys in suits sitting in the press box. And we're our last game of the year is in Philly. And we're not making the playoffs. Yeah. And I'm thinking, I said to King Clancy, I said, why are we going to Atlantic City? Like, why is he rewarding us for not making the playoffs? He said, I don't know. That's just Harold.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. So, off we went to Atlantic City, all the guys with their suits on and that were sitting in the goddamn press box. And I think there was 8 or 9 guys went down. And we lost 7-1. And I think we only had 8 shots on goal. And one of them was my shot from probably 5 feet inside the blue line, which was probably the best shot we had the whole game.
Now, we just got a couple minutes left with you, Troy. We want to thank you so much. We could talk to you for hours. But with that team, it sounds like that New Jersey team is pretty close. How about some of the funny stuff that was going on? Any pranks that you can share with us that got your attention? I'm sure Muller, being the leader he was behind a few.
Well, you know what? There wasn't a lot of pranks, you know what? But Kenny Danico might have been one of the funniest guys. He's in that picture there. One of the funniest guys. And then there's Boschman and Stewart. And I remember, I could tell you 1,000 stories. So Boschman and Stewart and I were lying. And Laurie got his 1,000th penalty minute or whatever it was, right? So I said to Stewie when he was in the box, I said, I'm going to ask the coach to put us out there with somebody else. I said, whack somebody, slash somebody, do whatever. I'm going to cross-check somebody. We'll get a picture of the 3 of us in the penalty box together for Bosch's 1,000th minute. So we did. And then I got that photo of the 3 of us with our arms around each other celebrating Laurie's 1,000th minute in the NHL.
That's a good one.
Kenny was hilarious. You know, he'd skate to the bench and he'd go, you know, if he maybe got an assist or a goal or something, he's like, what? Fight everybody, block every shot, score every goal. What else do you want me to do? You know, like, or he'd walk around the dressing room, flex his back, and he'd go, table for 5, anybody? Table for 5, and he'd be flexing his lats, you know. And I remember after the season there, he goes, Troy, he says, talking to the ref, he says, they're putting a new penalty in next year. He says, it's going to screw my career over for sure. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, you know, when the guys are in front of the net, you know, and I grab them and I just throw them out of the way. He said, they're going to call me next year. Kenny Danico, 2 minutes for pure power. He was a fun character, fun character.
Now,
he's a pretty funny guy.
Oh yeah.
Now, Troy, how was the European experience?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. Great experience especially for a guy like me who, you know, fought his whole career, got to go over there. I think I one-punched a guy once in England and I one-punched a guy once in Germany. And that was enough to let the whole league know, don't bug me. And so I got to play. I had tons of fun. I got to see Europe. Just a great overall experience. You know, I had a lot of fun and I had friends over there too. So it was good. It was a great way for me to end my career. And I tell everybody, I've got a buddy of mine, Andrew Desjardins from my hometown here, won a cup with Chicago a few years back. And when, you know, he wasn't playing much. And I just said to him, I said, Andrew, if you ever get a chance to go to Europe, just go do it, man, just for the experience. And I think he's been there for 6 or 7 years now, still playing. And, you know, I said, plus, what better way to keep making a living than being a hockey player? You know, you're still getting paid. You're seeing Europe. Your kids are getting an education of how the world is, languages, whatever. So, yeah, it was a great experience to be able to go there after and play my last couple of years.
Well, Dave McElwain made the best of Europe. I'll tell you, he was there for what, about 10 years or 12 years?
Oh, at least, yeah. Same with the other guy, Lenny Socho from that same junior team that had all those great players. Lenny went over there and he won every division to get his team in the DEL, the team I played for. He spent probably 18 years playing over there. And another guy from North Bay that I played with, he was over there. He played there for probably 15 years, married a girl, moved back here. And yeah, I knew quite a few guys that went over and played and made a very good life out of it. Well, same with McCourt, Dale McCourt, first rounder to the Detroit Red Wings, right?
Yeah.
Dale went over and played a good 10, 12 years over in Europe as well.
Now, speaking of playing in different leagues, I see in your resume here you played in that Quebec League. You're laughing, but you lasted there. Like, was it even too much for you to say enough of this?
Oh,
nonsense?
It was too much for sure. I tore my shoulder out in San Jose. I went back to San Jose after being retired for a couple of years, and that's a whole other story. But I tore my shoulder out, and I was trying to rehab it to see if I could get it to work again. And I thought, well, you know what? These guys called me and they're like, hey, listen, are you interested in playing? And this was the deal or whatever, right? And I'm like, yeah, I might as well just see if my shoulder's going to work, you know? And I got there and it was such a circus that I just said, like, I can't even do this. Like, this is to a level that it should be a movie, this whole thing. And like, it is utter craziness. Like what went on in that league.
Well, I think there was a movie called Danbury Trashers.
Well,
I'm joking. On a different version, but similar.
Well, I think they have a thing called Les Boys or something, a French version. I think is very similar too, but I still think that none of them even do justice to what was really going on.
Well, someone told me that basically all the tough guys would come on the ice for the opening face-off. They would all fight, and then the hockey game would begin.
Well, there was many varieties of things that would happen, but I do remember one of my games that Sasha Lakovic, who played a few games in Calgary, I fought him there. He went out and proceeded to basically take his elbow pads and gloves and helmet off and skate around the ice and give the old, I want to hear a cheer, like he's at a wrestling match. And this was like a 5-minute presentation before they actually got in a fight. And the refs just let him skate around and do this and cheer and flex and whatever, like for 5 straight minutes before the fight even started.
Hey, it's a long way from the National Hockey League, I would say.
No,
for the experience, to see it, to believe it, it was worth going. But it was such a travesty to the game and humanity that I just couldn't do it, you know.
So give us a little bit more insight into the Enforcer product that you're trying to create to raise money.
Well, it's not really an Enforcer product as much as it is just, there's mental health issues everywhere, right? And the world has just seemingly got crazier and crazier. The demands on people are higher. And I've been over to Afghanistan with the military on 4 trips. I've been to Kuwait 5 times. I've been to Ukraine. I've been to Latvia when we were preparing our soldiers for what's going on right now. I have a lot of police friends. I have friends that work in the military, and as an experienced fighter myself, not only is it hard to transition out of hockey just in general, because your whole life's been about hockey and then you have to adapt. But as a fighter, you've also have a different identity and people take you in a different manner. And so, a lot of us have went through a real emotional time in that. And then, just through other things in life. I mean, 50% of people get divorced, and so there's just mental health issues everywhere. And so I thought, it's a neat concept, because when the first time that we were asked to go over to Afghanistan, many of the wives were terrified to let their husbands go, and many guys didn't want to go to a war zone. So it ended up being almost all tough guys that went over there, fighters, right? So Tiger Williams, me, Probert, Stu Grimson, Ryan Vandenbush, Delgarno. So anyway, we had a whole group of guys that went there, right? So, and then I did a bit of a fundraiser using this Enforcers for the Forces big poster that we kind of made up, raising some money for some military charities a few years back. And people who love the old school hockey love that kind of stuff, right?
Yep.
And then I started thinking, all these tours we do, I get in a dressing room, I start telling stories, and guys like my stories. And so I thought, well, what if I gathered a bunch of NHL guys that were fighters, and quite a few of us have went through some emotional and mental stresses over our lifetimes and breakdowns and different things. And we do some fundraising for, other players, for military, for the police, and their benevolent association for police that are going through mental health and different things. But more than anything, just an awareness campaign, like just to let people know, hey, if these tough guys in the military and hockey enforcers and police guys can have, mental health breakdowns, then anybody can. And so let's not be afraid to talk about it. And so that's kind of where I'm kind of headed with this, just trying to get organized with, timing, arenas, players, insurance, liability, all these things that go on along with it, right? So I've talked with our PA about it, or alumni association, I should say, about it. And so just kind of in the early stages of getting that going. And so, yeah, that's the plan. Earliest it would be this spring, but it's probably more than likely will be in the future of next year, where we can get things really organized properly and do it well.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Great idea.
Well, I got almost 1,600 penalty minutes, Troy. Can I come?
Well, you're in, but you're in then. You got more than me. I might have a few more fights, but you got more PIMs for sure.
So on a final note,
right? A few fights. I just didn't win very many.
Well, it's funny, Troy, over here, there's a picture from the Hockey News, and it says "Devil in Disguise," and it's a picture of me when I was Christmas time, when I was beating everybody up, and part of the article is it's better to give than receive. The Christmas thing.
That's a very good point. Yeah. Now, just on a final thing here for you before we let you go is the political ambitions, and how did that all come about?
Well, I just lost my job with Calgary. The GM at the time had brought in, friends of his that he worked with in Arizona. And so I was the odd man out kind of thing. And so I was going through a bit of a tough time. And I was living at Barrie at the time. And I played noon hockey with Patrick Brown quite a bit at the time. And he was an avid hockey player. And he was I think an MP at the time. Yeah, MP.
Yeah.
And always doing fundraisers, always involved in charity, just a good guy, so we chatted quite a bit. And then he decided to run for the head of the provincial conservative parties. And so he ended up winning. And then, he was going to run for the leadership of the province. And him and I got chatting. I told him, I wasn't doing this, and I was thinking about moving back up to Sudbury and this and that. He goes, well, listen, if you're moving to Sudbury, he says, why don't you run? You or your mom. I said, you and your mom both got this reputation of helping everybody up in Sudbury and And I thought, you know what? I love helping people, and I've traveled the world. I've seen all these great ideas where cities use, both their assets of whatever it's mineral resources or their assets of their environment for tourism and different things. And I'm like, Sudbury doesn't utilize anything except for our mining. We got all these lakes, and we got all these outdoor rinks, and we got all these paths, and like it'd be fun to kind of help promote a better lifestyle for the people who live here, help to create some tourism business, which tourism helps the music industry, it helps the theater industry, helps the restaurant industry, and so I'm like, there's just so many easy things I thought I could help. So basically I thought, well, this is a great way, because what better than your friend being the premier to get funding to make some stuff happen, right? And it was a sure thing that, the Conservatives were going to win the election. But little did we know that Patrick was going to get ousted with a coup that went on. And so that was highly frustrating to be a part of that and see what went on. And I remained in the race just because I thought, well, I've went this far. I don't know Doug Ford, but, at least I'm going to get a chance to represent my city and my area and, appeal for funding. And it's not known as a conservative riding. So I thought if I win, that Doug would be very much in support of doing things for me and my area to kind of get the tide maybe to swing. But I didn't get elected. I came second to the NDP. Doug went on to win. and you can say whatever you want about Doug and liking and not liking Doug or whatever, but you know, we had a Liberal government in power here for 16 years, and we had our MPP here that was the head of the energy sector or whatever, and nothing ever changed in Sudbury. And we had a medical crisis with our aging population for 16 years, a shortage of beds and all these things. And literally 1 or 2 years into his term, Doug Ford announced $60 million for more hospital beds and more money for old age homes and da. So when we have nobody in the Conservative Party anywhere in this area, and he's still throwing money around that we never got when we had people in power, you know, shows to his character, because he was up here several times and I drove around with him, pointed out a lot of issues and things we could do. And he stepped in and did a very good thing for the community of Sudbury in the north, basically, for our hospital.
Fantastic. Well, Squid, we've kept Troy long enough. Any final thoughts?
I'll be seeing you hopefully sometime soon at another event. Squid and I both love to do the hockey events, and so we'll probably bump into each other at one of those. And I'll definitely keep you in mind if I get this tour underway this year. But for sure, we'll have her running by next year.
Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
well, listen, Troy, we can't
I'll
thank
make
you
sure
enough.
I say hello to your son and give him a hug for you.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, and your kids.
Listen, Troy, I want to thank you so much for coming on.
Down there. You can tell by how he acts on things.
Anyway, Troy, thanks very much for coming on. We really appreciate your stories, and we just ran out of time. But anyway, fantastic stuff, and best to you.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Okay.
All right.